What's going on, gamers? I am Merkaba18. Today, I am bringing you my endgame Spiritborn build. I will link to it down below so that you have a guide to follow as we talk about it. A lot of you have seen this in the live streams where I am hitting for hundreds of billions of damage and even up to a trillion or two at different times in certain rare circumstances. But needless to say, this is going to be able to handle 99.9% of all of the endgame content. You can handle Torment 4 very easily with this, and we have cleared the Dark Citadel. We have killed Uber Lilith with this. The only thing that it might struggle with at times is maybe some of the like 140 to 150 level pits and stuff like that. So there is a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about gear, skill tree, Paragon board, runes, gems, all of it. But first, I want to make sure you hit that sub button if you like the content. Look for other endgame and leveling builds here on my YouTube channel. Also, make sure to check out the live streams. I'll be live all month long after the release of VOH, and we're going to be doing free drops on the channel as well as the creator mount, which you can see right over there. And we'll be talking and playing through the expansion on numerous different characters. So let's dive right in. So there are 4 uniques that go in this build that are the sort of like centerpiece of this build. The big one is Rod of Capella K, which turns your core skills into basic skills and makes them free to cast. A bunch of complicated language there, but basically you just need to know that it's going to do more damage, and it's going to turn your build from a basic core rotation with cooldowns into just spamming your core with cooldowns. And it hits really, really hard, and we'll talk about why in just a minute. Now, Harmony of Abawaka is another mythic or another unique here. According to your secondary Spirit Hall choice, your skills are additionally either Jaguar, Eagle, or Gorilla or Centipede, and they deal 10 times to 30 times more damage per spirit that they have. So, in other words, this is going to do more damage based on choosing different spirits. So, when you choose, let me talk about this for just a second. When you choose your primary spirit, it's going to turn all your skills into that primary spirit. Now, Ebawaka also turns them into secondary spirits and makes them do more damage as a result of those 2 choices. It's going to do up to 30% more damage as a result of choosing 2 different ones. Now, there are a lot of builds that make the same choice, but this one's going to use the different choices, and I'll explain why that also increases some multiplicative damage later. Ring of the Midnight Sun is going to be our ring. This one gives you cooldown reduction, crit strike, and damage and rank 2 Mirage. When you critically strike, you gain 50% of the vigor you've spent in the last 2 seconds, and then gain the counterattack passive effect. So that's going to give you all of your vigor back as you continue to spam your core skill. Now, you're also going to get a lot of that back freely, but this is going to help sort of increase the multiplicative damage as a result of that. Last one, but not least one, is the Mythic Tyrael's Might. Now, this is going to give you poison resist, max poison resist. This is the piece that's going to be almost required for almost every class in order to really survive on endgame Torment 4. Increases your elemental resistance and gives you more of it. So you're also going to get damage reduction across the board and movement speed, which is part of our multiplicative bonuses. We'll talk about that in a second. And then whenever you're healthy, you also release a barrage. So very, very important piece of the gear here. If you're not using Tyrael's Might, or if you don't have Tyrael's Might, you can substitute that for putting Aspect of Might on some piece of gear in order to gain the 20% damage reduction. And then you're just going to have to work a little bit harder to get your resistances, perhaps temper into them and gem into them and stuff like that. So if you don't have Tyrael's Might, just do Aspect of Might for the 20% damage reduction, and that will help. All right, now let's talk about the other aspects. Insatiable is the big one. Now, kills extend the duration of Touch of Death, which is the core and basic skill because of Capella K. And when a swarm is replaced early, it bursts for 300% of the damage it would have done. Now, these are where the big crits come from. These are, whenever Touch of Death explodes, it's going to do 300% more damage on top of all the other stuff that it's doing as a multiplicative bonus. So you want to put that on your amulet, and you want to try to have that as high as possible. You're also tempering into duration here on a lot of your skills, and you're going to stack max resolve stacks there on your temper as well. Over here for our gloves, we're going to unyielding hits. Now, this is going to give you increased weapon damage up to 30% of your armor for 3 seconds, and the maximum bonus is 1500. So you're going to gain that base level weapon damage as a result of that, and it's going to be based on your armor, which should be maxed most of the time. Aspect of Disobedience is going to be another piece that is super helpful and important for endgame. because it gives you armor. It does reduce your cooldown on your, or increases your that actually take that back. This is not Juggernaut. This is one that just stacks up more damage. Every time you do damage, you gain up to a certain amount of armor, which will help you stay above the max. It also helps to trigger more of this for unyielding hits. We have Duelist down here, which is going to be the one that gives you max stacks of Ferocity, which is the defensive and attacking stack for Spiritborn. That's going to happen naturally. So you can have more of them, which triggers further deeper bonuses. All right, last one is Moonrise, which is going to give you basic skill damage and movement speed for 10 seconds. Now, basic skills and core skills are going to be one and the same in this build, so you're gaining a multiplicative and move bonus, which is also going to trigger another bonus here I'll talk about in a second. All right, in terms of runes, or runes and gems, now we're going to talk about in your helmet and in your chest piece, you're going to be using emeralds for the dexterity. And then in your if you're using Tyrion's Might, you don't need to spec into any armor here, or into any resistances necessarily. But if you don't have it, this is maybe where you need to plug in some different resistances. But otherwise, you're just going to go with armor here in your gems. And then in your pants, you're going to put Pock, which is a offering of 5, and then the spend is gain max resource. The offering that you're gaining then is Q, which is going to give you Earthen Bulwark, which is the Druid barrier. Now you're going to get a bunch of bonuses for barriers here, so that's one of the reasons you're using it. It also just reduces damage taken. Then in your rod, you're going to go Tam, which is the 25 offering, cast a non-channeled core skill, and then Cry, which is evoke the Spiritborn's vortex, dealing damage and pulling in enemies. So people are going to start getting pulled into you as you cast your basic. Now you want to hit tap on that rather than channeling it as a way of triggering that. So those 4 are your runes. You end up with a bunch of core skills down here we'll talk about in a second. Your primary spirit is going to be Gorilla. Casting a Gorilla skill, which is going to be, and all of them now, grant you 100% thorns and hits, and grants you a barrier for 5% of your life, up to 30% for 3 seconds. So it's going to be a little bit of a survivability there, and you're going to gain some multiplicative bonuses to your damage. Jaguar is going to be our off one, which gives you max ferocity. Gains the ferocity whenever you kill an enemy or damage a boss. So you're going to start gaining a bunch of stacks there for free. In terms of tempering, you're looking for touch of death and basic skill damage. And then on your amulet, like I mentioned, you want maximum stacks. On your boots, you're going to want movement speed in order to trigger some other bonuses. Attack speed, resource gen, basic skill damage. Those are the tempers. As you can see, I will link those down below so you can see them. All right, let's talk about the skill tree real quick. We are only using the 2 points here so that we can move on to the next tier. We're going Thunder Spike, and that's going to turn your core and basic skill are going to be one and the same. So you're not really using that; you're just spending the points to get through it. We're going to go Vigorous to give you vigor generation when you cast a core skill. And you're saying, well, why don't you use a core skill? We'll talk about it in just a second. Core skills cost 9% more, but deal increased damage because you, remember, are going to be getting a lot of free casts on that. And then down here, we're going follow through, increases your base damage, doubled to third casts. So basic skills are core skills, and core skills are basic skills. So you're gaining multiplicative bonuses there. All right, in terms of these, we're going Soar all the way up to making them vulnerable after you land. And then we're going Ravager, which is going to increase your damage per strike over 6 seconds, increase your max ferocity. We're also going to take these passives, 1 on Focal Point, and then 3 on Apex, which is increases your vulnerable damage, double this against elites. Okay, down here we're going Armored Hide, which gives you Unstoppable and grants you a 100% block chance for 3 seconds. It also gives you a 1 resolve stack per 5 seconds. We're gaining the passive Endurance, and we're going up to Perseverance, which gives you additional damage reduction for resolve stacks. Counterattack. We're only doing this simply because of the passive on it. It gains a 10% dodge and automatically retaliate against close enemies for 80% of the damage when you dodge their attacks. We're only doing the passive there. We're not using this as an active skill. And then come down and get the cooldown reduction. And then counterattack increases your crit strike by 6%. We're not using that. We're mostly using it for the crit strike for every close enemy. Up to 30% more crit there. Resilient gives you Gorilla skills, increase your max life. Dominant increases your damage to knock down enemies. Vehemence is your potency skills. It'll increase damage, which is this is a vehement skill. We're going poison for ravenous, increase damage to healthy, increase damage to crowd controlled, and then we're going. This is the centerpiece of the build, touch of death. You're going 5 out of 5 there, and then you're going all the way down until you turn it into a cooldown or into a core skill, which is how you become a core and basic skill at the same time. And this is also going to heal you well. Potent is a couple of extra passives here, increase damage for Jaguar skills, and then increase damage per stack of ferocity. All right, in terms of our passives or our ultimate, we're going with the Hunter, bound the battlefield, damage upon landing, and unleashing enemies in the area. It overfills the ferocity by 4 stacks and increased damage by 100%. And then killing an enemy with the Hunter reduces your cooldown on it, and it allows you a chance to instantly reset it. So you're going to end up with a lot of extra stacks of that as well. We're going to go to Resolution here, which is casting an ult skill grants 15% damage to elite enemies. Spiritual Attunement increases your vigor while you have an ultimate equipped. And then Supremacy is one of the best passives in the entire skill tree, which grants you up to 30% multiplicative bonus even after you've cast your ult. And then in terms of our passive, we're going Prodigy's Tempo. Every third consecutive cast of the same basic skill, which is becomes Touch of Death because of Capellique, increases all skill ranks by 2 for 5 seconds. Every third consecutive cast grants cooldown reduction up to 10%, increasing for 2% of their skill ranks. So you're gaining a bunch of cooldown reduction there, and it allows you to continue to cast it for more damage. Okay, let's talk about the Paragon board. Now, Paragon boards have shifted quite a bit because we're only allowed to use 5 of them. So we're using the following 5 glyphs, and we're taking them all the way to 100. Make sure you get them to legendary first, and then try to scale them up as you go. But the goal here is first get them to legendary, increase the range, and get that extra bonus. Legendary bonuses are new, so each of the glyphs is going to gain a bonus of some kind. This one gives you increase to elites. So we're going Spirit for the crit strike damage, and then also increases damage that they take from you. We are going to grab all the nodes around Tenacity and all the roads around Prime, and then you just want to make sure you grab every single point of Dexterity around this one. We are skipping these nodes here and grabbing the damage to elite and then the damage to elite up here. Second board is going to be for sapping. When you cast 3 gorilla skills with the same spirit in a row, it restores your vigor and increases your damage. So you're going to be casting gorilla skills always because that's what your skill is. It's also going to give you a bonus there for 5 seconds. Okay, we are grabbing rare node resilience. We are grabbing rare node opportunist here, and then up to denial and up to blessing. Come up and grab your second node, which is revenge. Gives you increased increased bonuses to all the range nodes in rare nodes in range. And if you deal Thor's damage, which you will with that gorilla spirit primary, dealing thorns to an enemy increases all damage that they take from you up to 15% for 10 seconds. And then the multiplicative legendary bonus is just an increase to damage. I think it becomes 10 to 20% or something like that at legendary. I think something close to that. And then we are grabbing concentrated here and eager prey here for the max resource. And then the nodes that you see here, I will link to all of these so you can follow the Paragon board very easily. All right, we'll come over to our third board, which is for Vicious Shield. Do increased damage for each 3% of your max life you have as a barrier. You're going to be constantly gaining that. So you gain increased damage. And there is no cap on that, by the way, other than your primary health. We're grabbing Primal Ward, and we're grabbing Raptor, and we're grabbing Fearless, and Slayer, and Bristle. Now, none of those really would have been a case in the previous iteration of this game because you had more nodes to reach than you do with this one. So that's why we're grabbing those, and then you end up with the non-physical bonuses there. Up to our fourth board, we are grabbing Fester, which is a huge boost, and I'll talk about that here. You deal bonus damage to up to 20% of your highest bonuses to damage types combined up to a 30% total. Because we're doing both Jaguar and Gorilla, and because it's a primary and a core skill, we're gaining up to 30%. Just assume here that you're getting a 30% multiplicative bonus there because of all of the bonuses that we're doing. And we're grabbing all of these rare nodes: Denial, Ruinous, Elementist, We're grabbing training, we're grabbing spearhead and skillful. Again, I will link to all of those so that you can see them. We're also grabbing the nodes around these. Come up to our fourth board. I believe this is also the final one. Yeah, our fifth board, excuse me, which is colossal. Just increases your damage to close, increases your damage to guerrilla skills, which is now all of them, and you deal increased damage for each stack of resolve you have, which is why you were increasing your max resolve. You grab all the nodes artifice, grab venom, and we grab patience, grounded, haven, and then our final legendary node is you have a 30% chance to knock down vulnerable enemies. You deal increased damage to crowd controlled enemies, which is almost all of them now. So you're going to gain a bunch of 30% multiplicative bonus there if they have any form of crowd control. So that is your Paragon board. You're gaining tons and tons of multiplicative bonuses there as a result of all of your choices. Now, final thing I want to talk about is your mercenary. We're going to go with Subo, the drunken archer. We're going wire trap so that he can fire physical damage traps. This one is going to grant you movement speed for 2 seconds. And then this one's going to give you a volley, which slows them, which is another form of crowd control. And then we're coming down to this one, which is increased critical strike damage for 5 seconds or 4 seconds. Now, for our reinforcement skill and opportunity, we are choosing Rahir, and we're choosing to go with Bastion, which is going to create a barrier that absorbs 90% of all damage, and he becomes unstoppable. So basically, that's a 90% damage shield. It also counts towards that shield bonus before, and we're going to attach that to the Hunter, so that as you're jumping in with the Jaguar, you get a shield, and it does a bunch of damage, and you're not going to take any. So the result is, as you've seen on some of my live streams, literally hundreds of billions of damage in this build. And let me know in the comment section below if you have any specific questions. I will link to the build so that you can follow along and make it for your own. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again for the endgame Warlock build.